be finally speaking to you.
My
So,
God, yeah, the honor is all mine.
thank you. So today we embark upon the fourth edition of Why Fashion Matters,
Mhm.
which is a digital talk series brought to you by the Design Village in Noida, India. So spring is in full bloom and nature has opened up its colors in all their ripeness. Amidst the colors of fervor, we sojourn down the memory lane with the ever humble Miss Priyarachini Rao. Thank you. It is as she heralds a fashion movement of her own accord and pace, absolutely conscious, resilient, and slow. With a career spanning over 2 decades and a half, Ms. Rao has witnessed a transition of tides of fashion through these many, many years, creating contemporary relevance by not conforming to concurrent styles and trends, remaining true to design beyond form, advocating the act of dressing up, not to be comfortable and not to submitting to just fads, but really making a difference. She remains a firm believer of the notion that everything must go back to the earth, as she prefers using textiles and age-old dyeing techniques replete in sustainable practices. For all things purposeful, Priyadashini finds a rush of adrenaline through her other interests such as marathons. It gives her an opportunity to channel her energy, meet new people, and travel places for an actual cause, which is extremely, extremely essential in a time such as today. I got to know you 12 years ago when I was still a student of fashion. It goes back to the times of Wills India in New Delhi at that time, as you effortlessly showcased your splendid collection to this wonderful, vibrant Japanese couple who were not only captivated but truly amused by the sheer simplicity and beauty of your creation. This, in my opinion, is a true sense of design. I thank you once again, Priyadashini, and a warm welcome.
Thank you.
So, one thing which I was extremely moved by when I was going through what you've written so far, there's a quote by Haruki Murakami, which you really sort of believe in.
Yeah.
So, what's nurtured slowly grows well. Could you please elaborate a bit about it? And why do you believe in it so firmly?
You know, I began my career as early as in the year 1996, and it was a very organic time. It was a time when there was a lot of time to, it wasn't so hurried. We had enough time to explore, to research, and every collection that I put together was like it was a labor of love. I enjoyed those first few years of design so much that I've shown with a lot of people who have currently shot to stardom, etc. But I realized that even at that point of time, that the one thing that I really wanted to do was feed my soul. It doesn't. It wasn't about making the top line. It wasn't so much about about making a very big statement with your fashion, with a kind of fashion. But I believe that even if you can touch a few people and really move them, really make a difference, it could be through clothing, through whether it is for my artisans or my clients, either one of the two sides. So I figured that the more I was hands on, the more fulfilling it would be for me, and the longer would my career, last. Honestly, that is the only way I know how to work now.
I think that is the way it's come out to be in so many years. And I think it would be fair to ask you how you've seen the landscape of fashion changing in front of you, because you've seen these 25 years. And I think
Yeah.
these 25 years have actually been the foundation of Indian fashion system across the globe.
Yeah, I think we did grow from a time when there were practically just about 50 designers in the entire country in the 90s, to about 20,000 today. And thanks to the institutes, etc. I think what I have seen over time is has actually been the bell curve of expansion and coming back to your roots. There was a time in the 2000s when everybody was extremely bullish and there were fashion weeks happening. Every state in India had a fashion week of its own. Everybody was showing on the ramps. There was a lot of money being spent, and people were going out to sort of hit the same customer over and over again. Um, But having said that, I feel that, over time, the ones who have sustained and who have stayed have been true to the kind of work they do. They've been, they've believed in the slowness of fashion. This whole thing about seasons coming and trends happening was really something that was quite lost on me, simply because I felt that, with a country like India, the best you can do is encourage the textiles, is work with the artisans, is work with the weavers, and create a relevant product, a contemporary relevant product for the woman who's relatively global. So what I saw over these 25 years was, I think, a complete cycle of what we believed in less is more, going into, more is what we want to do, and now we are sort of coming back to understanding this whole idea of sustainability is, according to me, less is more.
So when you talk about less is more, it is something which most of the people are sort of trying to encash on. So how does one actually go and understand why sustainability is important? And we go beyond the term because it has been
Yeah,
used in so many different contexts.
I agree. I agree. I think sustainability is a word that changes its meaning with each person using it. To me, sustainability is how well can I sustain the richness of the product that we have, which is you know which has its roots in the cultural heritage of the country. But more than that, how can I sustain the livelihoods of my artisans, my craftspeople, my weavers, etc.? So that to me is the top rung of sustainability. We of course want the product to be able to go back into the earth and move and cyclically kind of give rise to something new. So this could happen in the form of upcycling the product once it is used. The kind of dyes we use, the amount of water we use to wash our dyes, etc. But today I think what one needs to understand is that, especially post pandemic and the lockdown, the livelihood of our people is what we are really wanting to safeguard, and that is where the whole sustainability cycle begins.
Which is very right. So, how have you kept the studio practice very independent? And especially in times such as today, where everybody is sort of looking for fudge investment and they're looking for third parties to sort of feed in so that you don't have to worry about constant
Yeah.
funds circulating.
Yeah.
But at the same time, keeping a studio independent allows you for that flexibility.
Yeah.
So how does it work for you?
So we did make the mistake. We did go with a very big investor for our brand. Thankfully, it did not. It wasn't part of my own label, which is closer to my heart. Uh,
Right.
but the fact that when an investor comes in, you're completely hands off and you're only taking care of the creative process. That's all humbug. You really are pandering to the whims and fancies of your investor. God forbid if your investor wants to see the balance sheets every month, then you're sitting and creating those balance sheets. You're less a designer and more a business person at the end of it. And I saw that very closely. I have worked with Shoppers Stop, with Globus, as well as with Future Group on various spaces of consulting, and I think the learnings came from watching other people. I realized once again that since the top line did not matter to me, since I did not want to be a 5, 10, 20 crore business,
Right.
it was fine to stay ingrained in, the kind of small productions that we were doing. But, the moment you have an independent studio, your clients, your stores, you influence their buying, you're respected, and you're valued for the kind of person you are. You're not selling your soul anymore. So I
Yep.
think that won over everything else.
And I also think that is very much visible in each and every creation of yours. Every creation has a story behind it. Every creation has a poem, and that sort of translates in the way, right from the nomenclature of those products to how they finally go on to people and become part of the wardrobes. So I think that can only be possible if it is a practice which is very close to your heart, like you mentioned,
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I wouldn't know how to work otherwise.
which is fantastic. So, how does a typical day look like at Studio Rao? And how do you practice slowness and everything? And how do people who work with you get to sort of imbibe this whole process?
So, we're still a very old fashioned place. I write everything I do on in my little notepad.
Oh,
We work on hand embroideries. We work with machines that work with hand. Our day is compartmentalized. Mornings are some amount of brainstorming, but really visit to the warehouse, sitting with my tailors, understanding what the week's work, the day's work has to be. Afternoons are my own time when I can have some quiet time with my designing. Evenings are about logistics, understanding what couriers have to go, etc. But of late I've also started spending time on Instagram and places where the clients want to come and reach out to the designer and ask questions. There are women who tell me, I love this yellow sari. Do you think it'll look good on me? I have this kind of a complexion, etc. So that takes it took me some time to get used to that whole conversation process. But now I keep an hour and a half aside to be able to reply to them. I think absorbing every hour and being in that hour at that point of time is very, very important. And I like to not rush and not move into. So we have shorter, we do a 6 to 7 hour studio time. We do not work our people 9 to 10 hours, simply because I feel that you have to enjoy what you're doing. Even if it is, even if it is my tailor or my person who's doing the hath ka kaam, etc. But if you give them enough time to sort of and they're as committed to it as you are. So I think, and I give each one their own set of responsibility. They're not asked every day, what is it that you've done today and how much have you brought out. So the stress and the focus is never on speed. It's always on quality. It is always on a conversation and a running commentary with the tailors, with the warehouse people, etc. So I think that has seriously helped.
no, it's very important. And I think the more we are, especially after the pandemic, it's become more relevant how when each and every process needs to be that kind
Yeah,
sort of time absorption. So it
yeah,
makes relevance to why you're doing it.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
So while you are also working with a studio which is very limited, how do you work on your thought process? I would not use the word influence because I know knowing you, you will not do anything intuitive. It has to be really absorbed and responded to before you start drawing it out or figuring it out.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
how do you go about that?
So, I think the big words that influence me or influence my thoughts at the start of a line or even in the middle of it are words like memories or nostalgia. There's a lot of nature, but the nature that one imbibes in travels. So there's a lot of history or the narrative of a book that I have enjoyed reading, and that has influenced me a lot. I personally believe that you have to be a more holistic person to be able to absorb all these spaces within your design language. You can't say that Ralph Lauren is doing a particular line and hence I'm also going to be doing that. I mean, then you're a me too, or you're a maybe or a has been, or whatever word that you want to pick up. But the day you say that I want to be true to what I do, it has to be experiences, everything that makes you who you are. So yes, so some of my lines are based on nostalgia, times that I have, or holidays that I've taken in the past. Some of them are nature. So a particular lake that has really touched me. So it could be the color palette from there, the fluidity of fabrics, anything that brings that whole imagery of that space back to me. There were a couple of times when we worked on narratives of books and converted it. Of course, it was to my mind a character that I was sort of building and creating, but it really helps to create a look for that particular time. You of course have an underlying signature that carries through, but that's what makes each season exciting. And Yeah, I think those are the thought processes that really go into making any line, any new collection. Yeah.
Could you share one of those experiences?
So there have been I grew up in Dubai a couple of years, 3 years or 4 years of my childhood, and we used to go to a site where there were a lot of it was a massive camping ground, and we would see a whole lot of people merge together. It was called the Caravanserai, and as late as in 2014, we put a collection together which very vividly brought to me the melange of colors. It wasn't your typical Rajasthan or Gujarat or etc. It was what to me meant mixing of unusual colors, mixing of handwork with something that was completely out of it could be a screen printed product, etc. So that collection was something that took me back many years into my childhood, and it was just waiting to come out, but it took that kind of time to really sort of disengage itself from my mind. So yes, that was one very strong space.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
While we are talking about memoirs and nostalgia, your relationship with your daughter is very precious. So, with Maya, what is it that you've learned? Being a designer, being a mother, being a growing adult, how has time being spent with Maya changed you over years?
So Maya was is somebody that that allowed me to revisit. Of course, I think every mother would say that, but revisit my childhood. But
Right.
having said that, I feel that if you can keep your eyes and ears open and experience the world through their eyes, there is so much freshness. Everything from the way she loves swinging on the jhula, and even now she's a 16-year-old, but she still does that. She's taught me to be a little more abundant in my in my appreciation of the of nature, and I feel like I feel a lot more younger now than I did earlier, because I'm seeing this teenager with a whole different thought process growing up. We sit together, she gets me to listen to her music, which which is very difficult for a very retro 60s 70 kind of music enjoying person. We discuss a lot of books and movies together, and I find that having a younger person in the house really helps you understand, be a lot more patient, and look at the world through new eyes. And I think a large part of that has happened because of her.
No, I think it really does make a difference when you have someone younger because they might not be a reflection of your own.
Yeah,
However, they show you time through a very different lens.
I agree.
That is
I
something
agree.
just irreplaceable.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true.
Uh, uh, One more set of people who are extremely important in your frame of work are your weavers and printers.
Yeah.
If you could share an experience that happened with them while you were developing something
Hmm.
that actually changed the way you think and you respond to what you create.
So, the one time that really comes to mind, and it really stopped me short and made me think. Uh, I think it was about 2018, when I was in Banaras. So we work with a cluster of weavers in Banaras.
Okay.
When I say cluster, there are about 3 to 4 families which work together. And this particular time that I was visiting, it's never in Banaras. It's a distance away. It's a little village in Sarnath, which is which is where the Buddha achieved his. So anyway, so Sarnath is a village which has some amazing weavers, and these are all handloom weavers. Banaras, as you know, has a lot of these pit looms, and the pit looms are made because you cannot have the houses will become too long because the jacquards are put up on the looms, and the height of the looms are high. So what do? You go underground and you make it deeper. The particular time that I was there was the month of May. It was Ramzan, and it was a difficult time, according to me, for everybody, because you were hungry from sunrise to sunset, and you sat and you worked. I usually spend about a week with them, sitting and figuring out designs, talking to them, etc. And there was this particular head of one of the an older person, about 65, and he was one of the most amazing weavers that I had ever seen. And I was sitting next to him, and Chacha ji ke saath kaam karte the, and it was, like I said, it was Ramzan. I had a bottle of water in my bag, and of course nobody else was eating or drinking anything, and it felt very strange. So I sat there for hours on end talking to him, not touching a drop of water or anything. And he said to me, Bitya, your faith allows it, why don't you drink some water? You look like you need it. So I told him, I can't do that if I'm sitting with you and we are together and you're going through a tough time, you're working so hard. And this is what I actually told him. I said, you're working so hard and you're not drinking anything, or you're not, consuming any water or food. And he told me, but this is not work. This is art. This is what I do because it fulfills me. And I do not need food or water to keep me going. Of course, one knows that that's not how you should see it. But having said that, when he said that to me, and he says that every day that I, weave a certain butti or something that you sort of, challenge me to do or whatever, it's about me recalling my art and my and it's I never consider it work. So do not consider what you do work, and do not tell yourself that you're having a tough time. And really, I mean, what more could I have learned from somebody like that? And yeah, it stays in my mind all the time.
That is actually an anecdote, like
Yes, it is.
things like these always stay back. You wouldn't.
Yeah.
So while you were talking of handlooms and talking about these looms, which is that sari which has formed a special place in your mind, when you were sort of seeing it being woven, being coming out. So I love your hibiscus sari because of everything, the narrative, the color,
Yeah.
but which one is yours? So intrigued with the way you name them.
Yeah, so there, these a lot of them have names that are picked because of the shape and the structure. But the hibiscus sari, especially, the hibiscus is such a common flower. We do not give it a second thought. The color is not remarkable. We don't really think about it. But when we created the weaves and the print around it, it was about being very almost like an imprint, something that's there, very clearly there and in your senses, but you do not look at it. So it had to be tone on tone, it had to be imprinted, it cannot be in your face. Yeah, so these are challenges that I enjoy working with. And times when I interpret it could be a piece of nature or whatever into the clothing. But I'm amazed you noticed that with it takes an eye to notice that sari.
No, I just, of course, each and every piece has its own unique sort of tonality, but just maybe the name itself and
Yeah.
the way it was interpreted sort of caught my eye, and it just stuck by.
Thank you. Thank
So, whom do you see as your mentor, and why do you think mentors are important in today's time? While we are talking to students, a lot happens that there's, of course, the internet has everything available.
you.
So I really think that the word mentor itself has been reinterpreted, and people don't come to you to sort of always find affirmations, but they
Yeah,
just come to bounce of ideas. So
correct.
the real respect or nomenclature or what a word mentor stood for has lost its meaning.
Hmm.
So, coming from you, it would be great to know what do you see, whom do you see as a mentor, and how do you think it's relevant in today's time?
So, two people who have really shaped my entire thought process. I think mentoring is something that you do holistically in a person's life. It's not just about their trade or their art. It's about a lifestyle. Somebody who looks up to you and wants to duplicate what you have done. You're automatically a mentor to that person. Growing up, I think my mother was my biggest mentor. Her confidence in me and the fact that she always had my back was extremely helpful. But having said that, she was always a support system. While I was studying, Wendell Rodrigues was one of my chief. He was an art facilitator. He taught us draping. He was in many ways a mentor because you looked up to him. You saw the fluidity of his product, of the art that he showed. You wanted to be, and his art, his art is fabulous, and I enjoy illustration myself. In many ways, Wendell was who I wanted to be. I wanted to be as confident and love my art, etc. So in many ways, I think as a designer, getting into the industry and studying, he was a mentor, and he was somebody who who I constantly reached out to whenever I had reasons to have questions. uh, but having said that, I think my work, everything was pretty much my own, and he really pushed me in that direction. The inspiration that I always that people that I was constantly inspired by were never designers. They were people who either were authors or artists, etc. And everything from the way they grew into those people. Let's say that everybody has struggles, so one does not get inspired by struggles. One gets inspired by how you have turned things around, and how you have made relevant art, or relevant books, or relevant clothing that the decades after you, generations after you, will look at. So yes, I've been inspired by some fabulous, Haruki Murakami for one, who's a huge inspiration to me, and then there's Amitav Ghosh, who writes some amazing narratives himself. There are a whole lot of filmmakers and actors. So I think where it really comes from is keeping your mind open and allowing inspiration to sort of come in, and offer gratitude for that kind of inspiration that you have received. But yes, you're right, in today's day and age there can be no single mentor. There can be no one person who will guide you through your and it's fair. I think that's the way the world has grown.
Absolutely. So there's very little written about you across different platform. Was that a conscious choice that you made? Is it something that you sort of chose to stay away from? Because looking at the repository of work, it's so rich, and the world, only the people who know you sort of actually get to be uh, part of the world of Studio Rao. So how does that work?
Honestly, I always felt that your product should talk for you. And, a designer, just like in a show, when you have models, or you have your, you have your clothes horses showing your clothes, the only thing that the designer does is take a bow and move out. That really is in a way, life has to be for a designer. I prefer to stay behind the scenes. I prefer to have my sanity about me. I'm not someone who can network, and who can, who can spend evenings in vacant conversation. I need the richness of my family life, of my friends, and the kind of life I lead. And of course, it was a trade-off. It's always been a trade-off. I live in a secluded suburb. I try and keep that going, and to a very large extent, I felt that that has made me who I am, and does not sorry sorry
Please, Ram.
uh, um, so that has really made me who I am, and that is that is, I think that's how it will continue to be.
That's beautiful. So while you're talking about your own journey, it's how did the pandemic change? Did it change anything for you, or did it?
Yeah, it did in a very big way, in a very big way. So I till date, sorry
If you have to receive it, we can
sorry,
just.
no, I don't know why this person is can you just take this and tell her, okay, forget it, just keep it there. Sorry.
Please.
So so the thing is, with the pandemic, I always believed in an experience, in terms of when you sell a product. I always felt that the consumer needed to get your story, and needed to touch and feel and experience the whole product. With the pandemic, I actually learned, I taught myself to use social media in order to, in order to say my story. I did not want it to become, one of those kind of spaces which are like everybody else. You go to a studio and you shoot, and that's what you talk about, etc. I wanted the earthiness, the organic feel, the product to be more, touch and feel. So we created a page, just the two of us, me and my textile designer, and the two of us put it all together. It might look very amateurish to a few, and to others it might be, very soulful. But I think, learning to use social media and selling on that social media, we also put our website together, which I still kept very organic looking. We did put all these things together, and I possibly wouldn't have moved, and moved myself to move into this space if it wasn't for the lockdown and the fact that you couldn't reach out to your customers. So I think that has been a huge lesson. It is something that that has taught me how to sort of rework the whole communication space of my product without losing out on the product.
Which is very important. And I think that is a very good example of how social media needs to be leveraged out in current time, because an overload of anything is sort of not very contradictory. So I just feel that when you said it looks amateurish, it's actually just talking about what you want to create. And it is enough to create that dialogue between you and your customer. And that I think is what matters.
Thank you.
So, running marathons, has it changed you as a designer?
A marathon actually requires you to shut your mind to everything else. So in a way, running has been meditation. And the reason it became marathons versus shorter distances was because I had these long hours, 3-4 hour long runs. Not only does it allow you to meditate, it also teaches you to absorb pain and to understand. It could be your entire life relived in those 3 or 4 hours, and the euphoria at the end of it. I think
Right.
that whole space is so addictive. So it has allowed me, I think it's one of the few reasons why I consciously learned to slow down in the other spaces of my life, and tell myself that trying to make a new garment each day is not really as important as putting your soul into the one that matters. So I think marathons, and I've been doing it, having said that, it's been 7-8 years that I've been running marathons. I can't imagine not doing them.
Very inspiring. Thank you. So before I let my one of my participants from the academic team take over, wanted to ask you, why does fashion matter to you?
Fashion, to me, is a form of art. And what are we going to do without art? I mean, today, art, be it visual fashion is a part of visual art, and you can't tell yourself that life. We can't all wear white t-shirts and jeans all the time. uh, I think fashion is about self-expression, and self-expression is something that I don't think the world can live without. Um, it's very important. It's a part of cinematic art. It's a part of painting. It's a part of theater. It's a part of music.
Mhm.
Everything. Fashion goes. It sort of supports any other kind of art as well. So whether we like it or not, fashion has become such an integral part of our lives, that even if you're anti-fashion, well, you have to know fashion to be anti-fashion. So I
Correct.
think, I don't see the world being able to go around without clothing, without fashion, without textiles, and everything that goes with it.
Yeah, wow, that's wonderful. Also, I think it sort of underlines the importance of fashion as much as people want to denounce it. And
Yeah.
it also builds us back the confidence that the industry is going to see in times to come.
Yeah.
So, So I have Shireen, who is actually a student at the Design Village. She has been into fashion and textile for a very long time. However, she chose to choose space and interior at the Design Village and is in the master's program currently. So Shireen loves to create that balance between fashion and see how it can be extrapolated with how space can start playing with the dialogues. And of course,
Okay.
she believes in sustainable practices. Hence, I thought it would be great for her and you to interact in a short time.
Lovely.
Shireen, over to you.
Hi, Shireen.
Hi, Priyadarshini. Hi. So I have a question to you. My question is basically that the image of fashion that is being portrayed to young minds and students in general nowadays is something that they see on magazines and they see in fashion weeks, and they tend to get inclined towards that, which is very different from something that you're doing, like the whole sustainable part of it, or how actually you're creating your collections and design. So do you think that is something that needs to be worked upon, like the image that is portrayed to the young minds? And do you think that's something that you would be interested in working in future?
Shireen, that's a very, very relevant question for today. So let me tell you that even in the early 90s, when I was studying, fashion was shown only as what you if you could get your hands on a Vogue or a Marie Claire, that is what fashion was. There were fashion weeks even in those days, and we all grew up consuming that kind of fashion. But at the same time, there are thankfully we are in a country which has a lot of designers who are talking about not necessarily fashions that become trends or that are only on runways, but fashion that that is taken out from our heritage and culture, etc. So I think yes, I think to a very large extent our the mentors, the teachers can sort of talk a lot more about people like, let's say, a Ritu Kumar, who's working with a whole lot of clusters, or Bandage. Aparna's doing a lot of Archana's doing a lot of work with people, with craftspeople, etc. And the clothing that we make, it's not only rich in the Indian tradition, but it's also very contemporary and global. So I think sort of nudging students towards what India is capable of is very, very important. The other thing I think what one can do is sort of create enough interest to work with clusters, to and not the clusters that are overly exposed. But let's say, for example, Kerala had the floods about 2 years ago, and we worked with the Chendamangalam weavers, where they only used to make waffle weaves, and we converted those into fabric and clothing, etc. So I think allowing kids to use their imagination to to reprocess what is traditionally being made, etc., will really help. But I think it's you will always have some, let's say, a 10% chance is that you have 10% of the kids moving towards what is a lot more organic and sustainable, while 90% are going to move towards the fashion weeks. And I do have students who come up to me and say the only question is, how do I get into a fashion week? And they're not thinking sustainability, they're not thinking product, they don't care. What they want to do is see their name in the limelight. And that's the difference between quality and the fluff. And the fluff really sort of gets out and gets sorted and sort of gets out of the industry, and then you have the 10% who sustain themselves for many years to come. So I think it's a natural process of selection also. But having said that, yes, I think a lot more of sort of nudging them towards what our artisans and craftspeople can do can be a very good idea.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you.
Thanks, Shiri.
Thanks, Shireen. Thank you, Priyarshini. So there are these two prospective students at the Design Village who have sent in a question for you.
Mhm.
Shobika from Tirupur asks, what is consistency the main key for fashion? And how does it work?
I think that's hitting the nail on the head. Consistency in the kind of work or belief in the kind of aesthetic you have is very, very important. It's great if it works well for you right in the beginning, but consistency in the face of being defeated, when people don't understand your aesthetic and do not appreciate it, and yet when you're consistent to it and you keep working on it, I mean, that's how a great designer really is made. We've heard of Alexander McQueen or the others who were completely not accepted in the beginning and were considered wacky, and our own Manish Arora for that matter. But they consisted. I mean, they consistently kept working on what they believed was their aesthetic and did not give up. So yes, I would think consistency is a very big has a very big part to play. One needs to also understand commercial viability, etc. But yeah, I would still think being true to your aesthetic is by far the one most important thing.
Yati from Brookie asks, how confident should one must be about their work? How important is being confident?
So confidence is important as long as you're open to learning as well. I find a lot of students are so confident of their work that even if they don't know how to cut a pattern, or even if they don't know where the product starts or finishes, they're very confident of themselves. I think confidence only comes with enough experience and enough learning. And I think if at the end of having learned and experienced enough, you're confident of your product, then that's really good for you. Because today I feel that even though I feel confident of my product, I feel that I still have so much more to learn, and I can better it so much. So I think confidence in some measure is good, but not overconfidence.
Yeah, because I think it cannot overcompensate for your capacity.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So before we call this evening to a close, what is that one message if you could share to the Design Village community and future aspirants?
I'd like to tell them that design is a very sacred space. I think there should be a lot of gratitude in each one of us, that we enjoy the design process and that we are part of it. Uh, Treating it with a lot of solemnity and wanting to better yourself, wanting to learn, is a great space to be in. But I think end of the day, you know, it's a it's a world that's waiting for you to show your to show the kind of art or the work that you can put out there. um, so I think there should be a lot of gratitude, and there has to be I personally feel humility takes you very far, and teaches you a lot of things. So I think being open to learning, being open to the fact that you have to work hard, even if you're extremely gifted, um, is what is important. And I think really for this generation, because I see my daughter also growing up now, and things have been relatively easy. We do feel entitled about a whole lot of things, but knowing fully well that that there is a set of people that require your patronage is very important. I think it's all a basket, so I think humility, gratitude, giving back to the community, all these ideas should be part of what makes you the designer, what makes you the art person that you are. And I think it's very important to work with these. That's all I can, yeah, really think.
No, I think you've summed up the whole session very beautifully. It's so important to talk about such relevance because we easily come with perceptions that design is extremely glossy, and design is something which will sort of always be shown on the ramps and what is going to be there on the red carpet. But there's
Correct.
so much to it, and there's so much to learning from it.
Yeah.
So thank you for being with us, Priyadashini. I would just like to conclude in a few sentences here. So it's something very personal, and I just wanted to share this with you. Seldom do we come across people who actually inspire you and move you without them knowing, because you've not worked with them directly. And Priyadashini, you've been that mentor to me directly or indirectly. And this evening has been so revealing and incredible in so many ways that I cannot iterate it in one possible manner. It was crucial to know that fashion can thrive in such unhurried and more unrest experiences when one could actually enjoy the fruit of labor as it ripens deep. So thank you for being there with us today, and it has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Vatsal. Yeah, this has been a great session. Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
So Priyadarshini, we will have the next session of Why Fashion Matters on 15th of March. So this time we're actually taking a departure from fashion design and going behind the scene. We have Mr. Murray Malar R, who is a celebrated photographer and works on fashion filmmaking. So we thought, why not go and touch that domain as well? So it would be great if you could join in, and of course, for our future visitors, it would be great.
Lovely. Yeah. I'm quite looking forward. I read up about him and it's very interesting. I'll definitely be there.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so
Yes.
much, Vatsal.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good luck. Bye bye.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you.